Hey good everybody, this is Emer Soapshoot. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're broadcasting on September 14th, 2020. Hope all of you are well out there. It's a rainy day here in Atlanta, Georgia. Had a full week of sports activities that we're going to delve into. We'll get into the NFL, we'll discuss college football, some Atlanta United action as well in Major League Soccer, and maybe touch on the NHL and NBA playoffs when we conclude today's broadcast. But as always, you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. On there, you can see all of our archived content from our verbal, actually, I need to do a verbal submission podcast, but we have not done a verbal one in a long time. That's what focuses on combat sports such as mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. But what we do have up there are our previous Sports Inquirer shows. We also have Technical State of Georgia Athletics, which is our podcast focused on college athletics throughout the state of Georgia, such as University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, Kennesaw State, Georgia State, Mercer, Georgia Southern, go down the line of all those schools. So we have a podcast specifically focused on that. You can go on our site and check that out. You can also go to our social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram, under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. And then also on Facebook, you go to The Sports Inquirer, our page on there, and check out what we're doing. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under The Sports Inquirer. Like I said, it was a very active weekend sports-wise, and it was overkill in a way. There's a lot going on. As we'll go on throughout the show, we'll discuss everything going on, but at one point, there was college football, college basketball, college football, high school football as well. You had NBA basketball and NHL playoffs all going at the same time, and MLS soccer, because there was an Atlanta United game on Saturday night. All these were taking place within about 30 minutes of each other. It's a lot going on, but it's fun though. We knew this would be the busiest time that a lot of us have experienced on the sports side of things in years, possibly ever, because as I've mentioned, all things that doesn't even include the U.S. Open with the men's and tennis side, a theme winning on the men's side and Naomi Osaka winning on the women's side. That tournament really didn't get as much attention as it normally would because of all these other sports going on. Especially the NHL and the NBA all converging at this time, and Major League Baseball as well. So it's a lot going on. We'll try to get through all of the sports as much as we can as we go through everything. But everything's pretty good. We're starting to get to the point where fans are starting to attend some of these contests, and it's state by state. Like I was watching the Georgia Tech and Florida State game down in Tallahassee in the state of Florida, and it looked like it was a normal contest. A lot of people in the stands. I know they keep saying the sizes are 10 to 20,000, which if you do it percentage-wise, some places at 10% capacity, 20%, 25%, things like that. But still, it's a large amount of people. And the two things that we're not seeing, and I'm not picking on the state of Florida, because I've seen in other places, and I'll delve into the state of Georgia with my high school sports in a moment. You're seeing a lot of people in close areas, and you're not seeing masks being worn for the most part. And that's the thing that's been preached to us for all the safety officials and everything like that, is that the two things you can do to best prevent yourself from getting the coronavirus or passing on to someone else: social distancing and wearing a mask. And I've seen these contests the Florida State one. I saw it in high school football in the state of Georgia or in Metro Atlanta, the different highlight shows that come on Friday night around 11 o'clock after the games are over. I'm personally not covering the high school sports. I was going to the games and to keep distance from everything going on, but I'm watching the crowds, and it's weird. And it seems like it's down by count. It's almost down by county. Some counties, I see the stands; they're completely empty. And there'll be a handful of people there, like friends and family and things like that. And then I watched some other contests. Let's just say, we'll say Gwinnett and Cobb County. And I watched some of those, and really Fulton as well. They all are. The Cavs not playing football right now. For those of you that are in Metro Atlanta listening to me right now, so you know that the counties they're all separated by. You could be in one county and driving to another. But the point is, so they're all connected. But I see some of the highlights, and I see full stands, especially on the student section, student side, and similar deal. Everyone's gathered together. I don't see one mask, or I see only a handful of masks being worn. But it's to the point where people are grown. Well, in high school, I mean, they're teenagers and sometimes even younger. I guess the parents or our guardians can step in that regard. But we're at the stage where people are going to make their own decisions and about whether they're going to attend contests or not. And it's just a very tenuous situation. We see in the NFL, it happens as well. And that'll be the first portion of our show. We'll discuss the NFL, and I'll give you my quick thoughts on the Gridiron Blitz. You watch the Kansas City contest against the Houston Texans to start the opening season, and they had 16,000 fans or 20,000, whatever percentage was. And they're spread out okay, but still, I saw people sitting next to each other. And I know the excuse could be, or the reasoning be, that's my partner, that's my friend. We've been around each other for a long time, and none of us have gotten sick and all this other stuff. But that's very tenuous. And then you turn to the Falcons game yesterday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, and there's no one in the stands at all. You turn to the Los Angeles game, the Rams. They hosted the Cowboys, and against SoFi Stadium, I believe is the name of the new stadium. No fans in that. But then you see in the state of Florida, I think Jacksonville hosted Indianapolis, and I'm sure and this would be a good time for me to pull up my notes as far as everything going on. And I'm sure they had fans in their stands, because I want to make sure I'm being accurate with my analysis. They were in Jacksonville, and I saw people in the stands in the state of Florida. And you would think the state of Florida, something similar to Tallahassee with the Florida State Georgia Tech game, that'd be one of the last states that would want to have fans in the stands, because Florida has been really hit hard. I mean, every state's been hit hard in some capacity. But it's just very interesting seeing how all of these places are handling the fans being in attendance or not. The U.S. Open for tennis, which I know they probably lost literally millions of dollars not having fans in the stands, and it's in the state of New York, and New York has been a little bit more restrictive as far as their things like stores or restaurants, gyms, things like compared to other states. So they didn't have fans in the stands at all, and that was it. So they went with that approach. So it's very interesting seeing a tennis match for a championship, especially the U.S. Open, in complete silence. I mean, tennis, they do have silent moments when they're playing, but there's no energy as far as from the stands. So it's very unique seeing all of these teams, or all the different approaches that these sports have had going on. We all know about the NBA, NHL playing in a bubble for their postseason, and that's been very interesting seeing how they handle that stuff. So that's what I was doing all weekend, watching all of the contests and seeing how the different leagues and conferences, if we went to the college side of things, how they were handling stuff. So that was my perspective on it. But we'll start with the NFL and the Week 1 thoughts. And Week 1 is always the overreaction time for teams. And I'm watching, what's what I'm watching right now. I watch everything. Monday is a really good time to get a national scope of things and see what their perspectives are. I watch Speak for Yourself, and I mean, it's TV, so you know you kind of have to have hyperbole when you're talking, but it's like the Bucks are not going to win a game because of how they played against New Orleans, or not talking about Cam Newton and the Patriots, how they're going to win the division and make a long run in the postseason because Cam Newton had a good first game. All these contests, you have to take a deep breath, whether your team won or lost. I mean, some teams, and when we go over the games, some have more concerns than others, because you can look at the roster and you can see how they played, and it's like, well, it might be a long season. But if your team, you don't want to lose your first 2 games of the season. Usually if you go 0-2, your postseason percentages, and now they have extra wild card teams, so those percentages are not as accurate as they have been in the past. But if you lose your first 2 games, it's a 50-50 shot of you being a postseason team. If you win your first 2 games, I think it goes up to about 60% or so. And percentages are meant to be broken, but you could get an idea. Now, if you go 0-3, it goes down even more significantly, maybe into the 40s or 30s. And if you're 0-4, then it might be time to figure out what next season is going to bring. So if your team lost the first game, you shouldn't be packing the bags and saying, "Oh, our year is done." But there's some teams you could tell after the first game, things are a struggle. We talked about in a previous show about the Chiefs defeating the Texans 34-20. I think what you saw from Kansas City in that contest is more balance. When you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire rushing for more than 100 yards, and Patrick Mahomes, him even getting a good amount of yardage himself with his statistics. Let's see, he threw for 211 yards, very efficient contest, 123.3 passer rating, and each guy, let's see, Watkins, Kelsey, and Hill each had a touchdown catch. Very balanced attack for the Chiefs. Chris Jones, very active on defensive end, had a sack and a half, very aggressive. So those are the things you like to see from the Chiefs, who I picked to repeat as Super Bowl champions. I have been defeating the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, so my pick looks good so far, but we'll see what happens there. Then you move on to and we're just going down the line. Buffalo was able to defeat the Jets 27-17. I think the Jets are in a world of hurt right now. Darnold, 250 yards passing, 1 touchdown, took 3 sacks, threw an interception. Leading rusher for the Jets was Frank Gore, only 24 yards rushing. Le'Veon Bell, the big free agency signing from last year, only 14 yards rushing on 6 rushing attempts. That's unacceptable. He had 2 catches for 32 yards receiving, but he had only 46 total yards in an NFL game. That can't happen. And you have to think Adam Gase, we'll see what the firings are during the season, because the year's already been out of whack as far as everything preparation wise. And I think firing your head coach in the middle of this season, one, it might seem a little bit cruel. I mean, it's a business though, but also how much is it really going to achieve? Because a lot's going on there as far as things are going on. So we'll see if there's a firing along those lines. But if someone was going to go, he would go, because it's not working out for the Jets. Buffalo, now it was a good day for Josh Allen, 312 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's very big. He did lose 2 fumbles as far as rushing the ball, so he did have 2 turnovers. But if he can not turn the ball over and throw it efficiently, they're going to have a pretty good deal going on in Buffalo as far as that goes. And then you transition to the Bears. Late win over the Lions, 27-23. Mitch Trubisky through 3 quarters did not look so good, but had 3 touchdown passes in the second half, and that led him to the win. Detroit, you figure that if Matthew Stafford was able to connect with Swift on that catch, they win the contest. Late in their final drive, Detroit was going down the field. I said they were, once again down by 4. Stafford leaves a beautiful pass to DeAndre Swift, University of Georgia running back, and he drops the ball in the end zone. He catches that ball, they're probably winning the game. But still, they gave up a lot of yardage late in that game to the Bears. Very important win. Yeah, they outscored the Lions 21-0 in the fourth quarter. Big win for the Bears, because you look at that team, and I'm finishing last in the NFC Central, or NFC North, and I just don't like the quarterback situation. But for them to get a road win and a division win at that against a team that picked to finish ahead of them, that's a solid win by the Bears as they try to navigate their way in a very interesting NFC North. And speaking of interesting in the NFC North, the Packers went to Minnesota and were able to defeat the Vikings 43-34. It was really a double-digit lead throughout the contest. Aaron Rodgers had a spectacular performance, 364 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, hit multiple. Adams, Valdez, Shantling, and Lazard. They each had a touchdown catch in the contest. We talked in the offseason about them selecting Jordan Love. The Packers selecting Jordan Love, quarterback of Utah State, in the first round. What would that mean for Rodgers? You saw what he did in that type of performance. This is a thing you worry about Minnesota as well. We talk so much about Kirk Cousins and what he's going to do, and that's a fair assessment, because they will go as far as he can take them. But you look at the numbers, only threw on 59 yards, Dalvin Cook only 50 yards rushing. Thielen did get his 110 receiving yards. If they're going to be a team that reaches the peak level, they're going to have to run the ball more and leave it less in Cousins' hands. And then also, Minnesota does not have the offense that doesn't have the team that can allow on 43 points from the opposing. No team can do that and allow 43 opposing points to lead to the win. And if you look at the contest after the heading into the fourth quarter, the score was 29-10. So the Vikings, they got a lot of garbage yards, some extra yardage in the end of the contest, but Green Bay dominated that from the very beginning of the game. We spoke about the Patriots earlier, and Cam Newton able to defeat the Dolphins 21-11. I think what you looked at with the Patriots is that the offseason, Cam Newton, he signed late. He wasn't able to get a full training camp in. We signed before training camp technically began. He didn't have a full offseason with the Patriots. Their offense is very complicated. All offenses are, but the Patriots have a very intricate offense. There's a lot of different reads and things they have to do. So I think with Josh McDaniels, the offense coordinator, and head coach Bill Belichick, they peered back the playbook. They made it very simple, a lot of easy reads, things that Newton can handle in his first week. And you saw that. He 155 yards passing. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. So he had a very efficient, 75 yards rushing, very efficient contest. It's not going to be like Brady in that offense, at least in the first month or two, where they're going to throw the ball 40 times to 7-8 different receivers. That's not Cam Newton's game, even at his best. I'm not saying he can't be as good as Brady in that offense. It's just a different skill set. So when you look at that, get used to more of those type of games with New England, especially in the early portion of the season. I look at the Washington football team, and they're able to defeat the Eagles 27-17. The Eagles led 17-7 at halftime, but the Washington football team, I keep saying, I usually say Washington. That's the main name I say, but I can't use the R word, and we shouldn't use the R word. We've gone over that all through the summer, but I'll just say Washington. But they outscored the Eagles 20-0 in the second half. I don't know what's going on with Philadelphia. Well, it's real simple. And if you look at the players, the offensive line's depleted. They're already dealing with offensive line issues during the offseason. It was Jason Peters, him not wanting to play inside, even though him not wanting to play outside when he's being paid for being an interior offensive lineman. That was bad. Then they lost several tackles through the contest, so they were really depleted on that side of the ball. Carson Wentz 2 interceptions. That's not a good sign at all as well, him turning the ball over. I still think the Eagles can be a contender. I think it's going to be them in Dallas in the NFC East. That's really what it's going to be. But that's not a good sign for the Eagles to give up a lead like that. Raiders defeated the Panthers 34-30 on the road. The first win as the Las Vegas Raiders. Very solid win for the team. Josh Jacobs, 3 touchdown runs. Had led a big push in the second half, and that was a good win for a Raiders franchise that may not see too many wins this season. Just a team that a lot of suicide polls or pools were hurt by this one. The Jaguars defeated the Colts 27-20. There's no possibility for an NFL team to tank because you have professional athletes out there, and football is all sports are hard, but football is the one sport that if you're not out there 100% committed and focused, you can get injured. You get injured in every sport, but football, you can have more likeliness of a catastrophic or a long-term injury that can alter your money in the future. So those guys are out there playing. They're not messing around. Now, the front office, they can make trades and moves to make the roster weaker. That's a form of quote-unquote tanking if you want to go that route. But the Jaguars still able to get a win over the Colts. And I didn't like the signing of Phillip Rivers with the Colts in the beginning of the offseason. I'm not going to say he's I won't say he's washed or he's done, but you saw him have many interceptions, threw a late interception in this contest as well. When you're at Rivers' stage of his career and with those habits, that's not going to change. And the Colts have a really good offensive line. They have good skill players. It's a good roster, but those turnovers are not going to just go away. When you saw him throw 20 plus with the Chargers last season, I don't think he'll throw that many this year. But as I said, that you don't just change in one offseason like that when you have those habits. Baltimore defeated the Browns 38-6. Yes. Yeah. Look, we've talked about the Browns before. I have them as a playoff team. I think they can still do that. I've seen a few Super Bowl picks for them. No, that's not going to happen. I think what you saw with the Browns and some other franchises, and it's 50-50 split, because if you look at the Washington-Philadelphia game, you'd figure Ron Rivera, new coach, second-year player, quarterback in Haskins, new system, that would make them stumble. They were able to come out and get a victory. I thought the same deal would happen with the Browns. You have a new head coach, you have Baker Mayfield, who's a third-year quarterback, but still a lot of moving parts. And the teams with continuity and stability, like Seattle, who we'll get to in a moment, Kansas City, those type of teams are going to do very well this season. New Orleans, those type of squads, I think, will be more successful in the first month or so. I think it evens out after that. Then some teams that are dealing with a lot of new moving situations. But as I said, you have the Browns, 6 points. There's no reason they should ever score 6 points in a game, but they had the 6 points in the first quarter and just got beaten up throughout the rest of the game. You know, Lamar Jackson, I think with him, I don't know if it's like a Roy Jones Jr. You must have forgot situation where everyone's like, oh, we forgot about him. No. I mean, he's 20 for 25, 275 yards passing, also had 45 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's the reigning MVP. So it's enough of the media and other people saying, oh, he's underestimated and underrated, and give Lamar his respect. Look, he was the MVP last season. He had a great year. He's coming into this as Miss Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the league, if you hear a lot of conversation. For him, it all comes down to the postseason. He's 0-2 in the playoffs. We've seen him lose, several times, especially last year, losing at home to the Titans. For him, it really comes down to what he's going to do in the playoffs. Regular season stats are great, and that's good. And you got to get to the playoffs, so if regular season doesn't matter. But I think with the evaluation of Lamar Jackson, I think a lot of people are just waiting to see what he does in the playoffs. And just running down the rest of the games, now Saints and the Bucks, New Orleans able to get a 34-23 victory over the Buccaneers. I think with Tom Brady, he's not the same quarterback he was 2 years ago, let alone 5 years or 10 years ago. So you see the name, he's kept himself, and he looks the same physically. And that's the thing about him. He does a very good job taking care of his body, I'll give him that. But he's not the same quarterback. The arm is not the same. Throwing across the field is not going to work. The pass that he threw on the wide receiver screen that Janoris Jenkins picked off, Jack Rabbit took it back for a touchdown, the pick 6. A few years ago, he had the arm strength and had the ability to maybe throw that ball a little quicker out to the receiver and not allow the DB to pick it off. But those days have changed. Those times have changed. And that's what's going to happen. He has to make an adjustment. The ball to Mike Evans, it was a misread by him. And I'm not saying that to slight Brady. Bruce Arians, the head coach of the team, came out and said that was a misread on Brady's first interception. Mike Evans ran the short route. Brady threw it long. That's going to happen. He's not. And look, you can have all the Zoom calls you want. I know this personally, and I'm sure you listen to this. You can have all the Zoom calls. You can do all the text messaging, the phone conversations. All technology is a beautiful thing, but it's still not the same as meeting one-on-one or being, in this case, in your job, interacting with your worker one-on-one or your boss, or in sports-wise, practicing with your teammates. And those type of plays are a sign that those guys have not been practicing. And it's not their fault. Trust me, they're doing as much as they can within the time limits, but they have not been out in the field as much as they would like. I think that changes over time. I think Brady figures out the system and they work it out and they figure it out. But you saw some signs that, for all the criticism Jameis Winston took, which, I mean, you throw 30 interceptions in a season, that's understandable. The former quarterback of the Bucs, he still had an elite arm. Still has an elite arm. He's back up in New Orleans right now, waiting for his time. But he had an elite arm to throw his way out of a lot of those situations in the Bucs system. Arians got to make an adjustment and do the same when it comes to Tom Brady in the system. And I think they'll figure it out overall. Let's wrap up the last few games of the slot. Yeah, let's get to the Falcons game. I completely missed that. 38-25, Seahawks were able to defeat the Falcons. As I've said with the Falcons before, and I listen to local radio and some colleagues, or not colleagues, I don't work with them, but people I know, and trying to get the vibe of the fans. And Falcons Twitter is a hoot. I highly suggest that you do that because it's an interesting fan base. It's a fan base that hasn't won as much as some other ones comparatively, but you would think that the Falcons were, they've had some success over time. This is the most successful run they've ever had. They've been in the postseason, winning records, but every time something bad happens, whether it was a bad snap or a fumble, they did the fake punt, and they got the guy snapped up, caught the ball, ran it for a first down, but then fumbled it, so the Seahawks got the ball anyway. It's like typical Falcons, or this is being an Atlanta fan. I don't like that woe is me attitude, but it is comical. I'm not from here. I was born and raised in New York. I've been here 10 years, but still, it's comical to see these people that every time something bad happens, they go back to the 70s and the 80s, like times before a lot of them were even born, about this is why bad things are happening. The reality is with the Falcons, you had a really bad start last season, an inconsistent coach, Dan Quinn. You should have fired him in the middle of last season and started anew. All because the Falcons, they went 6-2 in their final 8 games, showed some signs of life. That was a mirage for the reality of the Falcons organization. They have bad line play, and actually this is probably the sad part, or the bad part is, I thought their line play was decent yesterday. I thought Matt Ryan had some good protection to make a lot of throws. Defensively, you saw Grady Jarrett get in the backfield, Zach McKinley. They were actually getting some pressure. Now, Russell Wilson did some magic and was able to elude a lot of the rush. But so I thought the line play was decent. But in the past few years, they've had terrible line play, relatively speaking. And the stats and the numbers that you see Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley put up is in garbage time. Either games that don't matter or games that they're losing. You look at Matt Ryan, 54 pass attempts, 450 yards. If you throw 54 times, you're darn right better throw 450 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He had a pick in there. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Gage each had more than 100 yards receiving. And they still lost by double digits and were dominating the entire contest. That's a typical Atlanta game. You put up the offensive numbers, and it's like, oh, that's great. And they still lose. That's the reality of that franchise. And they're going to fire Quinn at the end of this season. And you're saying, oh, I was talking about at the beginning, overreactions and don't look into one game. I've looked at 2 seasons of this ever since they lost the Super Bowl to New England. This is who they are. They are an average team that has bad line play. They have some solid Matt Ryan's a solid quarterback. Julio Jones may be the best receiver in the game, and that's legit. I'll give you that. But when you have inconsistencies on every level of the field, especially your secondary that you're trying to rebuild on the fly, you get dominated. You allow Russell Wilson to throw for 322 yards on 31 of 35 passing, and you allow just complete dominance. And Wilson's a great player, Super Bowl champion, future Hall of Famer. I give you all of that. But that's where I saw that game and I was like, that's typical Falcons. Not Falcons of the 80s and the early 90s or wherever you want to name all these different guys from different eras. Under this current regime, that was a typical Falcons contest. And you saw that on full display. I'm very intrigued to see what happens with the Falcons. And the radio host and columnists and even some of the fans, like, it's okay, it's one game. We'll see what happens. I've heard that so many times here in this city, and excuses. especially under this regime. And I think all because a guy makes it to the Super Bowl, you lose the Super Bowl nonetheless, and they say, oh, let's give him some leeway. Let's give him some free time, a free pass. If you win the game, maybe. If you lose the game, absolutely not. And they lost it. They blew the biggest lead in the history of professional sports, at least in the United States. And you brought them back, and the malaise of it is still there. And furthermore, and I'm going on a Falcon rant because it's deserved, they have not made any significant changes from that time, from that loss. Your quarterback's the same. Some of your receivers are the same. Some of the defensive players are out there, same deal. So every time a Falcon fan looks out there, they still, in the back of their mind, they still think of that Super Bowl and that loss because you have not made any changes. And you came into the season all because you went hot 6-2 over 8 games against inferior opponents, and that's the result that you get, a flat performance. And if the Falcons turn it around, I have many friends and people I know here that are big Falcon fans and family. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see the Falcons do well for their sake. I don't care. I keep it straight. I don't like anybody. That's just a job. But it's just I don't see any. I just don't see it in that regard. Now they're not going to go 2-14 like that. They have enough talent to be a team that can win 5 to 8 games. That's just what they are. Now some years they might win a few more of those and get to 9 or 10 wins. And then sometimes they might lose a few of those and become a 5-4 win team. So they're not going to completely bottom out, but that's just what the reality is for that team. Chargers defeated the Bengals 16-13. The field goal kicker for the Bengals tried to kick the game to tie it at the end of regulation. He got injured. The kick was missed. But I thought Joe Burrow did a solid job. I was watching more of the Bucs game, Bucs and Saints. But I think Burrow did a decent job. Had a nice touchdown run to get a TD, a 23-yard TD run. He took 3 sacks, doing an interception, no TD passes. But the Bengals, their offensive line is not very good. He was running for his football life a lot of the contest. And when that happens, it's not going to end well for you for the most part. So he's working through it. And I think the Bengals, he proved himself in college. I think he's going to do okay. But that's a very tough road that he's going to have to go through in Cincinnati to do some things. And the final 2 games of the early part of the week, we still have 2 Monday night games. Cardinals defeated the 49ers 24-20. I think this was a solid win by the Cardinals. I was saying preseason that some people were taking the Cardinals kind of as a dark horse, as a team to be a wild card team, they even win the division. I'm not willing to go that far, but I think Kyler Murray, 230 yards passing, 1 TD, also rushed for 91 yards and had a TD run. Nuke Hopkins, 151 receiving yards. I don't know if he's going to be able to run that much, still sustain it, because he's going to get hit, and that's a problem. But I was more impressed with the defensive side of the ball, only allowing the 49ers to score 20 points. Look, we know the Cards are going to score points. Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, he's going to throw the ball all over the place. Murray, he's accurate. He's going to get his yardage. You have 2 very good receivers in Fitzgerald and now DeAndre Hopkins. But it's the defense, if they're going to make any noise and be a contender as far as for the postseason, or maybe even the division, the defense has to show more. And they showed that, allowing only 20 points to the 49ers. That was a very good effort by the Cardinals in a division that can be intriguing. I think the Seahawks are the class of it, but I look at the Rams last night and their win over the Cowboys. They're average, and then they just beat the 49ers on the road. Maybe the Cardinals can be that second place team. And if you're second place in your division, that puts you in the playoff hunt. So we'll see what happens there. And then the Rams and Cowboys. The thing about the Cowboys is they have all the talent. They have a lot of flashy names. On the offensive side, Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, and Amari Cooper. And then defensively, they got Lawrence, the defensive end. Look at Jalen Smith and the linebacker. All those guys, and in the end, it's the Cowboys. And you could change the head coach, you could change the logistics of it, but in the end, it's just a team that underperforms, is inconsistent. And then you had this silliness. You're down 3 in the fourth quarter. You're in the red zone, fourth down. You're going for the first down instead of kicking the field goal to tie the game. Decisions like that, and they didn't. And obviously, they threw a short pass to Gallup. He was tackled and was short of the first down. You allow after that. You go down the field, or the Rams go down the field, burn some more time. Then you have the Cowboys get the ball again, unable to do anything. 2 minutes left. You have the ball. You have a timeout. And look, I know that people look at the Gallup pass or the offensive pass interference when he pushed off of Jalen Ramsey and say that's a ticky-tack call. That's a call they shouldn't make in that time. Look, he committed the foul. Now, Jalen Ramsey, he did sell it well. I'll give you that. And he did do a little bit of extra acting there. But you still had time to go down the field, and you had a timeout. And they were unable to do anything there. And I think Dak Prescott, everyone looks at him, is he a top 10 guy? Is he a top 5 guy? What was his long-term deal? I think if you want to put yourself in that position to be in that upper echelon of quarterbacks, you have to find a way to win that game. And he just didn't do it. And the reality is, they are going to go as far as Dak goes. I think Dak can get you to win a division, maybe even a playoff game. But to reach that championship level, it's not happening. At least for now. And since the first week, a lot's going on, and we'll see what happens there as we go through the week. I'm going to do my Gridiron Blitz podcast later on in the week, where I'll delve deeper into the games and give you a little more specifics as far as everything going on there. So make sure to be on the lookout for that show. Let's transition over to the technical side of Georgia athletics and what's going on in the college football field as far as the state of Georgia goes. The Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech had a very nice win over Florida State, 16-13 on the road on September 12th. The Yellow Jackets defeated a Division I FBS opponent in the season opener for the first time since 2016. So there was a few years since they did that first true road victory to open the season, since a 33-3 win back in 2007 at Notre Dame. And they also opened up with that victory the season with a true conference road win for the first time since 1996 when they won at NC State. So they did a lot of accomplishments there as far as getting the victory. So they also outgained in the contest itself. It was a very interesting contest to watch. 3:30 start Eastern Conference time, or East Conference time, East Coast time, and they started the contest, got through a little bit of first quarter weather delay. Well, there was a weather delay to start before the contest even started, even kickoff. It was kicked off at 4 o'clock, supposed to be scheduled for 3:30. So they start the contest, and there's a delay. And there are multiple delays throughout the contest, but Georgia Tech still was able to find a way to get the win. And it was also their 4th straight regular season victory over Florida State, dating back to 2008. So this was a very big win for a franchise or for a team that only had 3 victories last season and able to go on the road and beat Florida State. Here is head coach Jeff Collins on the victory.
That was a great game. One of the best games that I've ever been a part of here. 1999, Joe Hamilton, Peter Warwick. It was a battle. It was a great college football game. It was my first game as a graduate assistant, first away game in this environment, and all of those things were great players battling. And tonight was the same. It was 2 really good teams battling under the most adverse circumstances imaginable. I don't think anybody outside of our bubble or even their bubble understands the level of commitment, the level of faith, the level of character that it took just to get us here. And I just want to make sure I thank everybody in our administration, all of our players, the training staff, the equipment staff, the players, our coaching staff, operations to get us to this moment.
And that was head coach Jeff Collins on the team's win over the Florida State Seminoles. Some other notes from the game. Jeff Sims, the true freshman quarterback out of the state of Florida, he earned a start. We're hearing in camp of him, Jordan Yates, and maybe some other guys, getting an opportunity to start. But they went with Jeff Sims. It looked very good in the contest. First true freshman to start a season opener at quarterback since Reggie Ball back in 2003. And also the first true freshman QB to win his season opener in the history of Georgia Tech. To be fair, they only started true freshmen being able to play back in 1972. And Georgia Tech's been around for literally 100 years. But still, a major accomplishment for him. Statistically, 24-35 for 277 yards, the most since Reggie Ball back in 2003. And the 277 yards were the most since Justin Thomas back in 2014 in the contest against Wofford. So that all those stats alone made it probably one of the better, and getting a win on top of that at Florida State, one of the better first game performances history of the program. 15 completions in the first half alone were the most by a quarterback in a full game over the past 12 seasons. To be fair, we know that Paul Johnson was the previous head coach before Jeff Collins. They ran a triple option. Not many passes were being thrown, let alone completions. So the 15 completions in the first half were more than any game they've had over the past 10 plus years. So a very interesting statistic there. Here is Sims discussing the victory and what it meant for him and the program.
Before the game, during the week, they told me that they would have my back the whole time, the whole season, and they just went out there and showed it. And I'm proud of them. I love them, and I'm just glad we got the dub. It's definitely a big win, first game of the season in Tallahassee away. So I'm just glad we got the win, and we continue to work, we continue to get better, and yeah, basically. First half, we made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, and we were driving the ball good, but just couldn't finish. So at halftime, we just logged in, talked about it, and just told ourselves that we got to cut out the silly mistakes and just go out there and execute. Playing off the glory of God. I feel like him being with me helped me throughout the game, and just put my trust in him, and that helped me stay calm and not get too frantic. Man, yeah, you know.
And here is Jeff Collins discussing the team's offense and their approach and Jeff Sims' performance.
His stats, the best thing about him is on the sideline, he was not phased. He was not flustered. He stayed poised. He never got too high, never got too low. Learns from his mistakes. I mean, there's not many true freshman quarterbacks that can come in and whatever his stats are, they're pretty good. But just his leadership, his demeanor, his composure, the way the guys believed in him and he got the thing rolling. Dave Patnote, I thought, managed the game really, really well. Some of the things they were doing, the answers that we had moving forward, had 3 drives in the red zone that obviously they didn't end with points like we wanted to. But the character of our guys, even in adverse situations, they rose to the challenge. So just really proud of him. Really happen everywhere, but it happens here, and that talks to the culture, the love, the trust, all of those things that these young men have for each other, and you can't fake it. And just really proud of how they bonded together and how they really pulled for each other to help each other get that win.
And that was Jeff Collins discussing the team and the victory. On the defensive side, Curtis Ryans had a very strong night himself as well. First 2 sacks of his career. His forced fumble on his second sack was recovered by David Curry, and that ball was returned to the Florida State 11-yard line, which set up Jude Kelly, who's a true freshman himself. He's a freshman himself. He hit the 32-yard field goal that gave Georgia Tech that 16-13 lead with 8:56 left in the fourth quarter, and the Yellow Jacks were able to hold. The defense was able to hold the Seminoles and led to the victory. Here's Curtis discussing the team's defense.
Well, it started, we had to bring our own juice. I felt like when we went up there, we was dragging a little bit, but we still stopped them a little bit. But we could have played harder. So I got my boys. We all came together and we started balling. Well, I'm just praying for my boys. They're doing their thing. It just felt like a normal game to me. We was a few short in rotation. But we have some young guys behind us and encouraging us to play hard, play fast. So I'm just praying for my boys to come back. I miss them.
And here's Jeff Collins discussing the team's defensive effort and limiting the Seminoles' offense.
I thought they had a good opening script, right? They were fast, they were tempo, and it took us a second to get used to it. I mean, we've been in we've been in a bubble, right? And we've had to follow all these protocols. And you guys have been to our practices in the past. Practices in the past have been ridiculous tempo, 2-spot, 3-spot, guys running everywhere, chaos. And we've practiced that way and gotten used to it. Well, in this offseason, we couldn't do that. We had to be in our safety loops. We had to be one-spotted. We had to make sure the guys were staying 6 feet apart for the last 6 weeks. And we tried to get tempo and simulate tempo, but it's hard. It was the first time that they have seen that level of tempo in a live situation. And I thought Andrew Thacker and our defensive staff did a great job with adjustments. They got our defensive players on the sideline, talked them through the things that they were seeing. Nathan Burton up top was a graduate assistant when I was here with Chan Gailey, and just proud of him, how he's matured and developed as a coach. The eyes in the box, getting that information to Andrew Thacker, who I think called a heck of a game. And the way he motivates our defense and gets them dialed up and ready to play. The work that Marco Coleman and Larry Knight have done to improve our pass rush, to improve our ability to build a wall up on the run game, set edges. That was the difference in the game. And all 11 playing as a unit. And if you guys notice, we were just waving guys in and out. I bet when we look at the stats tomorrow and we look at the number of plays each kid played, I bet there were 27 to 28 defensive players that played significant time. So our ATL philosophy, how polarizing it may have been when we first got here, pays dividends in situations like this. We were rolling guys in, rolling guys out, and we were able to finish strong in the fourth quarter and close the game out. And the pass rush and the coverage, how those marry together, just really proud. But again, opening strip, it was really good, right? The tempo, the pace. But once we settled down, got a feel for what they were doing, how they were trying to attack us, just really proud of our defensive staff and our players adapting and taking all that information and then go out and play at a high level.
And that was Jeff Collins discussing the team's defense and their effort there. So a very big win for the program that I said last year was in transition and everything going on with the new offense, new systems, just new approach to everything. They've really broken down the program from operations to the bare minimums and the bare essentials and have built it back up to what they want to do. So that was a very big win for him. Some of the other teams are waiting to get revved up and ready to get started. We'll discuss that Georgia Tech win a little bit further in our Technical State of Georgia Athletics podcast. And I'm going to plug that as well. We're already lining up some really good interviews. We did a media scrum with head coach Sean Elliott for Georgia State football. They opened up against Louisiana later on this week, so we'll have audio from that. We also will be able to speak to Sally Pohamus. I can confirm that, from Georgia State volleyball. We're going to speak with her about the team as they work through the early portions of their regular season. And also we have Brett Surensee, the head coach of Georgia State men's soccer. We spoke with him about previewing their season, which opens up this week as well. So make sure that you head to the site and check all of those out, not only individually those interviews, but also in our Technical State of Georgia Athletics podcast. We're going to transition now to the original free kick and discuss Atlanta United. They fell at Nashville 4-2 at Nissan Stadium in Nashville on September 12th. Jeff Larentowicz and George Bello scored their first goals of the season, and it also saw the debut of homegrown player Tyler Wolff. The 17-year-old became the second youngest player to start in the league match in club history. I think he was the only youngest one was Bello himself a few years ago, or last year. I get the teenagers confused as far as the numbers go, but I believe it was George Bello who was the youngest before Tyler Wolff, a guy's moment. Atlanta struggled from the start. Gave up an opening goal. Their opening goal in the first minute of action when Henry Mukhtar swung a corner kick from the right side. Dax McCarty, I'm getting my footballs mixed up. Dax McCarty, he headed the ball towards the far post, and Dominique Baji was able to chip the ball in from McCarty's header and made the score 1-0. Now, Atlanta was able to answer the goal and tie it up 1-1 when Larentowicz scored his first goal of the season off of an Ezekiel Barkle free kick that Lawrence was able to redirect on a glancing header and made the score 1-1. That was 41st goal of Lawrence's career. From there, though, Nashville once again continued the offensive onslaught. Mukhtar scored the second goal for Nashville in the 28th minute. Atlanta turned the ball over heading towards the net. The counterattack was led by McCarty, or led by Mukhtar. He slid a right-footed shot past Guzan. McCarty scored a third goal off of a header from Daniel Lovett's cross. So that made the score 3-1. And then Nashville scored the first goal in the second half in the 57th minute when McCarty played the ball over the top of the Atlanta backline and found Abu Dinaldi, who was streaking towards the net and pushed the ball past Brad Guzan. Atlanta did get a goal back later on in the second half, in the 61st minute, off of a goal from George Bello. But outside of that, it just was not the best performance for Atlanta United. Here's George Bello discussing the loss.
Yeah, like you said, we basically gave them goals. Our turnovers, our mistakes. And I feel like it's just a focus thing, mentality thing. Getting into the game from the first minute, like you said, we're on the back foot from like the first couple of minutes. So I feel like we shouldn't feel bad for ourselves when that happens. We need to step up instead of going down. But yeah, I think it's just a mental part of it and being locked in from the first second, from the first whistle. And I think that's what we need to get by and get forward, moving forward, have that in our locker. Yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating not having to win games. Football is all about winning, and we're not doing that at the moment, but that's football, and we just have to keep our heads up and try our best to keep our heads up. And this is a time where we can't crumble, try to blame each other, try to go against each other. This is the time where we need to really come together, look at what we're doing wrong, but not be biased, but like against each other, and just stay with each other through these times. And like I said, football has tough times. This is really when we need to lock in and do things together and be together as one.
And that was George Bello discussing the loss to Nashville, and here's Stephen Glass discussing the defeat as well.
It's I don't think any manager in the country can legislate for the sort of mistakes that we made tonight. Defensively off a set piece, poor, giving the ball away, poor, not defending crosses, not very good. It's not... a team can't be on the front foot if you can't pass it out of your own half. So that's an answer to your question about being on the front foot. That would be the reasoning behind that. I think I did a lot of my talking at half time rather than after the game. We had a good discussion after the game. I think the players know the standards that are required, and they know that there's no excuse for the performance level tonight. We win and lose as a group, obviously, a group of staff as well. But I think there's a lot of people that know they didn't come up to the required standards to play for the club tonight.
And now Stephen Glass discussing the loss, and finally Jeff Larentowicz, the captain of Atlanta United, him discussing the defeat to Nashville SC.
I don't know. I mean, tonight it just wasn't good enough across the field. I take responsibility. My performance was bad. I'm wearing the armband. I have to get better out of my teammates. But first half wasn't good. Gave away the ball, gave away goals. Did nothing to help Brad. So turnovers, inconsistency on the ball. It was all there. Of course, there's hope. There's 12 games left. We just did 3-day trips in a week against difficult opponents. So of course there's hope. There's 12 games. We have a week to prepare for our next game against a team that we need to beat. So there's absolutely hope, and we need to work our way out of it. It begins with working as a group and preparing to step on the field with full concentration the next time we play.
And now Jeff Lawrence discussing the loss. Since the restart following the MLS is Back tournament and the dismissal of previous manager Frank DeBoer, Atlanta is 1-3-2 at this point of the season, since that MLS is Back tournament. Here's Stephen Glass discussing the state of the team.
Use that term, I'd say more a reality check. that if you don't do the basic things well, if clear instructions are not followed and people decide to do what they want to do rather than what the team needs them to do, then the team finds itself in trouble. So the reality check is that the work rate needs to stay really high. The following of instructions needs to happen. And it's not, you can't play for 45 minutes and expect to beat anyone. So I think that's the reality check. There's obviously a good number of games coming up that if we can start getting points on the board, we need to get in the playoffs. So the opportunity is still there. But there's zero excuse for the level of performance tonight in my eyes.
And finally, let's hear from Jeff Larentowicz discussing the team trying to overcome the adversity of not only having a new manager, dealing with the departure of Pity Martinez, and everything like that. So here is Jeff Larentowicz. And that was the original free kick portion of our show as far as Atlanta United actions. They return to action this Saturday against Inter Miami. So we'll have plenty of content on our site about that contest as we get closer to it. And finally, the Miscellaneous Department. As I mentioned, the U.S. Open. I didn't watch too much of that. Naomi Osaka able to get the win there for her second U.S. Open title in 3 years. She's emerging as a major player. Serena can't play forever, so it's good to see some other players do that as well. Speaking of not playing forever, the trio of Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic, maybe 3 of the top 5 tennis players in history on the men's side, history of the sport, neither one of them even reaching the quarterfinals, or definitely the semifinals, in a tournament was very rare. Now, we all know Djokovic, he was defaulting in that match where he hit the lines women. We delved into all that stuff. But it's good to see some different guys get the spotlight. And Thiem, the Austrian, who has been that guy, he was the second seed in the tournament, so it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. He finally broke through and got his major. That was really good to see that take place. I think the NBA playoffs have kind of lost their steam with football, and I think there's have some lapses. We've not seen Boston and Miami play in a few days. The Clippers, they lost Game 6 of their series against Denver Nuggets in the semis, and that was not many people even talked about it. LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers eliminated Houston Rockets on Saturday. There was really minimal interest in that. I think that NBA, now that we're getting into the heart of football season, they're taking a little bit of a hit. So we'll just see what happens there as far as that goes. And that concludes today's show. Thanks for listening. As always, head to thesportsinquirer.net for all things that we're doing and everything that's going on. You can also go to Twitter and Instagram under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. And Facebook, The Sports Inquirer. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under The Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight, good night, be safe out there.